Hey everybody, today I'm making a video about how to read and write music for the drum set. Now you might be wondering, do I actually have to read music in order to play the drums? The answer is no. Some of the best drummers of all time were not reading musicians. But in my opinion, it's incredibly useful to be able to read music as a drummer. It's very helpful for learning new songs and archiving old music that you've already learned. And it's super helpful for working through exercises and playing gigs as a drummer. So today I'm going to talk about where the different drums and cymbals go on a music staff and some tips and tricks for how to notate. Thanks for watching. A music staff is a system of lines and spaces where the lower you are on the staff, the lower the pitch, and the higher you are on the staff, the higher the pitch. This is true for any instrument, and it's no different for the drum set. Even though the drum set doesn't have specific notes or pitches assigned to each of the drums and cymbals, there's a general lowness and highness to the tonality of each instrument on the drum set. So the lower the tone, the lower it is on the staff, and the higher the tone, the higher it is on the staff. The drum with the lowest pitch is the kick drum or bass drum, so this gets placed on the bottom space on the staff. Here I am drawing 4 quarter notes on the kick, which should sound like this. The drum with the next lowest pitch is the floor tom, so this gets placed on the second space from the bottom. Here's 4 quarter notes on the floor tom. The snare drum tends to be around the middle of the range of pitches, so it's placed on the third space from the bottom. Here's the snare. The rack tom is the highest pitched drum on the drum set, so we put this on the top space. And if you have a second rack tom, this goes on the line just below the first rack tom, the second line from the top. The cymbals get placed at the top of the staff and are notated with an X rather than a regular note head. The ride cymbal is written in right here on the top line of the staff. The hi-hat is written in the first space above the staff. And the crash cymbal is written on the first ledger line above the staff. Here's a summary of all of the elements of the drum set and where they should be notated on the staff. Okay, now let's try writing out a groove. I'm going to write out just a simple rock or pop backbeat with 2 measures of music here, starting on the hi-hat and then moving to the ride cymbal. As you can see, I recommend when you're writing out a groove, starting with the part that is the most consistent. So in this case, that would be the ride and the hi-hat. They're playing eighth notes up there, and then I'm adding in the snare and the kick drum next. And then after that, you can start writing in your stems. If you use all up stems, like what I'm doing, this makes it really easy to see which elements of the drum set should be played together during the groove, so that's my personal preference, all up stems. Okay, here's how that sounds. Alright, the last thing I'd like to cover in this video are some other common techniques that drummers use and how to notate those. So the first thing I'd like to cover is an open hi-hat. Let's say we want an open hi-hat on the last eighth note of the measure. All you're going to do is circle the X of that note where you want the hi-hat opened, and that tells the drummer, okay, open hi-hat on the last eighth note. Sometimes this will also be written with a little circle above the note. That's also a valid way to indicate an open hi-hat.
Another common technique that drummers use is the cross stick on the snare drum. This is where you lay the stick horizontally on the drum and play the rim of the snare. So this gets notated on the snare drum space, but using an X instead of a regular note head. The last technique I'd like to cover in this video is a flam, which is when you play with both sticks at the same time, but with them slightly offset from each other. To notate a flam, you just draw a little miniature note in front of the note that you wanted to play a flam on. Oftentimes it gets a little connector from the miniature note to the main note.
Alright, y'all, I hope this video was helpful. And I want to just point out that there are a couple of other techniques like rolls and drags that I didn't really talk about in this video. And that's because I'd like to make a future video that goes into depth on those topics. So stay tuned. Thanks.